Okay, there are also more options you can use in your workflow, for example, regarding uploading and downloading data. You have already seen the downloading data in the battery pack workflow. So let's have a look on how we can set it up also for the upload. There are two options. You can use the relative file path and the basic containers. If you use the relative file path, you can also use a file path. This is more general. For example, if you have an Excel spreadsheet that doesn't have a basic container, then you can use this and the user can basically up or download anything that is input. For the basic containers, it's a bit more specific. For example, if you have a body container, then you can enter geometries, bodies. If you have a surface container, this limits the options a little bit, so you can make use of the filtering options of the basic containers. If you have a surface, for example, the user is not allowed to enter a solid body there. And vice versa, if you have a solid body, then the user cannot enter any surface. Then we have text, for example. Text also doesn't allow numbers, number doesn't allow text, and so on. So it is generally recommended to use the basic containers. It makes it more specific and also more easy to set up. But nevertheless, you can also use the relative file path for some special cases. So let's check it out in the second workflow that is also available in the downloads. The more options workflow, so it looks like this. Just as a quick introduction, we have import geometry, it's this bearing here, and this is going to be meshed. This mesh here stays also visible in the workflow. And then here above we have some check nodes. And we want to output those. They are already marked as output, and a unique name is also given. Is this geometry valid? Yes. Is this mesh closed? Yes, they are already in output. By the way, you can also mark two containers and set them together. So you can just mark them, go here, register as output, and again, it's registered. All right, so let's stay with the output. We want to make this mesh available for download. So what we will do, that we have the mesh output here. We create a mesh basic container, and then just assign it as an output. Nice. Okay, let's check it out also for the input. Here we have our body container. And this is going to be our input, and we delete the cable, the wire. So this is our workflow that we want to publish. I will save that, and then let's check out how it looks in Run. Here's our workflow. So we are able to select a file. I will drop this bearing I have here, and I will run the workflow. Okay, so what you can see now is our input. We have our bearing input here, as we set it up, and on the right side in the output, we have defined the mesh basic container as an output. So we are able to select a format here, for example, STL, and then download it. All right, then let's go back to our workflow, because there are also other options. For example, when you want to use the relative file path or the file path, it is similar. So you need the relative file path, and you need another node. For example, here I use the export STL, and that gets the file path. The file path will be registered as output, and of course the export STL also needs some data, and this is the mesh from before. Then the relative file path needs a file name and an ending. For example, here we also need to specify the ending, the .stl, if you want to use export STL. So you see that it is a bit more effort we need to put in here. But once it's defined, we can also save that and publish again. Then I'll refresh my browser. And without running, you'll immediately see that on the right side. Now we still have the mesh basic container output that will be available once we run the workflow. And now we also have the relative file path here. So if I just let it run, you will see that with the relative file path, it's a bit different. We have specified the STL, and therefore we cannot select the format as we can with the basic containers. All right, so then let's go back to our workflow. and let's talk more about default values. Let's stay with the example with the relative file path, because also this has some interesting options. Here, for example, we have our file name mesh.stl. So why not make the user choose the name of our file that they download in the end? So let's just drag the mesh panel, what we have entered here, to the front. And it is a text, obviously, so we can just create a basic container for the text and make this an input. And we give the input to the merge text. Okay, so as you saw before, this input will also appear in the inputs in Run. And then let's just add also our panel where we have written already mesh, and open the sidebar. And then we will go to our inputs, and there we see text. We can go to the settings, and here we can we have two options: mark as optional and also set default value. And here's set value from canvas. We click it, and then you see that the wire disappears, and we have this little check mark in the basic container of the input. So that indicates now that this basic container, this input, has a default value, and we have already assigned it from the canvas with the name mesh. So when we go back to Run, we will already have a suggestion for a name called mesh, but if the user wants to give another name, they are allowed to. There's also the option to make inputs as optional. In this case, it is not required. Because we don't have any optional input, but there might be notes where this could be interesting, and it's the same as you saw before. So we go back to the input, to the sidebar, to the inputs, go to the settings, and then mark them as optional. That's how you set up your workflow for up and downloading data. You've learned the differences between relative file path and using basic containers. Another topic or question you might have is, can I use linked workflows? The answer is simply yes, you can use them. It's really not a hard topic. So just go forward and check out the infos at the online documentation. You've learned how to prepare and how to publish the workflow. Now, for the final step, let's have a look on how you can make it dummy-proof and increase the usability.